mics. I would like to once again thank our staff that put this wonderful dinner together. I want to thank firstly and foremost our program director and organizer, Rabbi Moshe Silver. And our whole staff, Basi, Shira, Mushka, Batsheva. And I want to thank for the inspiration to make this happen, Rabbi Avram Silver, the Mashpia of the Mayanot Shul in Crown Heights. And of course, my dear colleague, Rabbi Shlomo Gestetner. No, we don't need musicians. Oh, for Dennis. After hearing a voice like that, I feel way too inadequate to try to speak into this thing. Thank God I only have to speak, not sing. And thank God the same can be said about the person I am about to introduce. Not only does he speak, but he speaks beautifully. Dennis Prager is one of America's most widely respected radio talk show hosts, columnists, authors, and yes, speakers. He is one of the friends and the spokesman of the Jewish people in 2012, the voice of reason. And so, without further ado, please welcome our keynote speaker of tonight, Mr. Dennis Prager.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Rabbi Gestetner, Rabbi Shem Tov, and ladies and gentlemen. I was given a time limit, which is I will obey, so do not fear. But I want to address critical issues, and I want to tell you what I want to do. I've been in radio 30 years. A little plug. If you live here in New York, I'm on from noon to 3. Thank you. On AM 970. So I have a national radio show, and I know radio very well. And I've advertised for 30 years. There are two types of advertisements I tell advertisers. One is for the product. The other is for the type of product. Type is tougher to sell than product. For example, product, everybody needs a car. Therefore, if Toyota advertises, they don't have to convince you about the need for a car. They have to convince you about the need for a Toyota. That's a lot simpler because you know you need a car. With Mayanot, you have a much harder issue. Mayanot is not in competition with other cars, as it were. The difficulty in selling something like Mayanot is that people don't know that they need the product. That's the issue with Mayanot. So I would like to address the product, not the specific way of doing it, but the product. The product is the Jewish people, Judaism, God, etc. I have always been preoccupied, since I was a child. It has not changed one iota. I am what I call a forest person. There are tree people and there are forest people. The tree person is preoccupied with the trees. The forest person is preoccupied with the forest. I am preoccupied with the question, why? When I studied in Yeshiva till I was 18, and then I went to Mesivta after that, I continued my Jewish education. All I kept asking my rabbis was why. They would say, here are the laws of kosher, and I would say, why? Here is how you build a sukkah, and I would say, why? To their great credit, they never threw me out of class. But they also never answered me. What we have lacked in Jewish life, I have claimed since I began speaking and writing at the age of 21. We have lacked in Jewish life the answers to the question, why? And in my opinion, that is the single greatest reason for Jews' alienation from Judaism, because nobody told them why. We told them how, but we didn't tell them why. Secular Jewish life says how, and religious Jewish life overwhelmingly has said how. Secular Jewish life tells us how to survive, and God bless them, by raising funds for Israel, raising funds for the Jewish poor, helping Jewish federations, helping the United Israel Appeal, as it's called in Australia, helping the United Jewish Appeal, as it was called in the United States, United Jewish Communities, whatever the name might be. All is wonderful. All is how. And in religious Jewish life, overwhelmingly, it was how. This is the way in which you observe Jewish life. Here are the hows. A lot of us wanted a why. I yelled why. Many of my peers just whispered why and left because they didn't think there was a why. One of the things that I believe that Mayanot does, and I think Chabad does, is not only deal with the how, but deal with the why. In my opinion, that is one of the secrets of the success of Chabad generally, and Mayanot specifically, answering the question why. But I'd like to give you my answers on the why in the few minutes that I have, because this is everything. I am a rationalist. I was never given a mystical bone. I was given a surplus of reason, so for those who are touched by reason, I'm your man. For those who need more mysticism, I'm not your man. So here are purely rational reasons for why the Jews should survive, and therefore why Mayanot is so essential. In no order of importance, number one, I am absolutely convinced on rational grounds that there is something divine in Jewish history. If you don't believe that, I need you to answer. I know I am talking to some fully secular people, and I honor your presence. But I'd like to ask those secularists a question. How do you account for the preoccupation of the world with the Jews? How? I want a secular, non-divine, non-spiritual response to the question of why the United Nations has spent more time discussing Israel than any other country in the world. Israel is the size of El Salvador. Now, can you imagine if the UN had spent more time on El Salvador than on any other country? Wouldn't you wonder why? We are one of the smallest people in the world, yet there is preoccupation with us. I am convinced that this preoccupation has little to do with us and has something to do with the divine. I would go so far as to say, and ironically I get a better reception when I say this among Christians than I do among Jews, I do believe we're the chosen people. And it doesn't make us any better. If anything, God went out of his way in the Torah to say we're not particularly impressive. By the way, I want to tell you something. One of the reasons that I believe that the Torah is a divine book, and I am not Orthodox, but I do believe that the Torah is a divine book, and I'll tell you one of my most powerful, rational reasons. It is the only Bible in the world whose people are depicted negatively. If people had written our Bible and our Torah, the Jews would have looked a lot better than they do. Think about it. To me, it is an extremely powerful thing. And non-Jews are constantly heroic. Noah is a non-Jew. He's a hero. The daughter of Pharaoh is a non-Jew. She's a heroine. Jethro is not Jewish. He's a pagan priest. He's a hero. I mean, the list goes on. The Jews are the jerks. The non-Jews are pretty damn impressive. That is a very powerful argument for the power. Did I lose you? Did you lose me? Maybe I said something that offended a Jew. The engineer is a Jew, and he was not happy with what I said. We have a remarkable Bible here, and we are a people that has been central to history, not because we are personally necessarily impressive. Jews run the gamut from impressive to unimpressive, just like anybody else. But, and here is the great issue, evil concentrates on the Jews first. We are the miner's canary of the world. Miners today take canaries down to the mine because when the canary dies, they know that they better fight the noxious fumes or they will die. I tell non-Jews, to whom I speak more than I speak to Jews. 95% of my audience is obviously not Jewish, because 95% of the country isn't Jewish. More than 95%. And I say this to non-Jews. We are the miner's canary, and you are a fool. A good non-Jew is a fool to dismiss the Jew's enemy as the Jew's problem. Because non-Jews dismissed Hitler as a Jew's problem, 50 million non-Jews died in World War II. And if non-Jews dismiss Ahmadinejad as the Jew's problem, many non-Jews will die then too. We are the miner's canary. We don't want it, we didn't choose it, but that's a fact. That's a rational fact. You don't have to believe in God to know that. Evil picks the Jews first. Never last, but first. That's pretty powerful stuff to be part of a people that would seem on rational grounds to have some sort of transcendent role in history, which I believe we do. Next, there are lessons that we Jews have as a result of Judaism, which are imparted not even always cognitively, not always consciously, but nevertheless imparted. I'll give you one that I believe, if one were to ask me, what's the greatest single lesson Judaism could teach the world? And I would say, aside from that God is a just God and judges humanity, I would say it is this: behavior matters more than feelings. That is the greatest thing you could teach your kids. The single greatest thing. How you act is infinitely more important than how you feel. When I sit next to someone in a plane, I live on planes, so I always use that analogy. I was speaking at the University of Georgia last night, and I will be speaking in Sacramento tomorrow night. So I really do live on airplanes. And when I sit next to somebody who's pleasant, I really don't care if they are personally depressed. I feel bad if I were to learn that. But I am very concerned, as you are, with how the person next to me in the airplane acts. You care how your spouse acts. If you love your spouse, you care how she or he feels. But it's most important how they act. To love your spouse and to act awfully towards your spouse is unacceptable. Actions matter. You know when I learned it? 4th grade Yeshiva. Rabbi Fostag, may he rest in peace, I assume. I just assumed, because 4th grade was a long time ago for me, and I don't know, maybe he's 163, I don't know. But on the assumption that he is no longer with us, may he rest in peace, Rabbi Fostag announces, boys, it's time to daven mincha. That means the afternoon prayers. And I walked over. I always had chutzpah, but I never was disrespectful, ever. There's a big difference between chutzpah and disrespectful. And I walked over, I said, Rabbi Fostag, I'm not in the mood to daven mincha. Rabbi Fostag was from Eastern Europe, but spoke perfect English. But I know for a fact, and I even realized it then, he had never heard mood and mincha in the same sentence. This was a new concept. And he thought, and he stroked his beard, and he thought, and finally he said, Shmuel Prager, that's my Hebrew name, Shmuel Prager is not in the mood to daven mincha. So what? He changed my life. It has been, that so what changed my entire understanding of life. If you act on mood, you are not going to be a good person. By the way, just to tell you how much I have taken this seriously, I wrote a 2-part series. I have a nationally syndicated column. At the end of each year, I write on non-political, non-social issues. A few years ago, I wrote 2 pieces. You could check it tonight. And it is addressed to women, and it is titled, When You're Not in the Mood. And I argue what Rabbi Fostag did. Not always, but as a general rule, Rabbi Fostag is right. And I mean it. It is this notion, you get that. That is why Judaism is behavior. Lo hamachshava ha'ikar ela ma'aseh. It's not the thought that counts, it's the deed. It doesn't matter if you mean well. It doesn't matter a hill of beans if you mean well. Do you do well? I apply that to politics. Meaning well, I'm not going to talk anything political, don't worry. But meaning well, this is the policy we want because we mean well. We have good hearts. Doesn't mean anything. Results matter. It's not the thought that counts, but the deed. Judaism is overwhelmingly powerful in what it could teach humanity and what it does. That's why these kids get so impacted. There are other reasons, and I'll come to them, but I have to keep moving because of the time factor. Here's another one in Judaism. So behavior over feelings. Here's another one. Obligations over rights. Americans are rights drunk. Judaism is obligations drunk. That's a huge difference in your perception of life. Raise your kids asking the question, what am I supposed to do? What am I obligated to do? You will raise a far better human being than, what are my rights? That is a major Jewish thing. You have a right to privacy in Judaism, but the Talmud says that if you build a house next to somebody else's, they have the right not to be seen, to have their privacy, so you therefore have the obligation to build a barrier so you can't look in through their window. These are awesome, awesome, life-changing ideas. And here is my favorite, because I see it being undone in our society. One of my favorite little riddles is, what did God create on the second day? And it stumps a lot of people who know their Bible or know their Torah. You know what God created on the second day? Separation. One of Judaism's greatest revolutionary ideas is the idea of separation, and there is a war being made, and I will give you 5 examples of separations that Judaism teaches that our society is making war against. 1, good and evil. They are separate, they are real. We have raised already a generation for whom good and evil are not really distinct entities, they are matters of personal opinion. What I think is good for me, what you think is good for you. I have asked Jewish kids, are the Nazis evil? And you know what they say? In our opinion, they may be evil, but in their opinion, they were good, so we can't say. They have been taught moral relativism. As Paul Johnson, the great British historian, put it in his seminal work, Modern Times. Einstein, he spends a lot of time on Freud, so I mentioned Freud. Einstein taught that the universe, that the physical world is relativistic. What happened was, at the same time, people were taught, if the physical world is all relative, so is the moral world. Just as time is relative, so is good. And now you see the difference in the way Hamas and Israel are reported. They are as if they are morally equivalent adversaries. That is the tone of virtually all reporting. In fact, if anything, Israel is more villainous, because every report will say, well, in the fighting that has been taking place, 106 Palestinians died and 3 Israelis. And so then you get all these commentators about Israel's disproportionate response. These people, had they reported in World War II, we would have lost World War II, because a hell of a lot more Germans were killed than British. So if the notion is who gets killed more is now the determinant of whether or not war is proportionate or not, clearly Britain and the United States were disproportionately consumed in their fighting against the Germans, or the Japanese for that matter. We have a morally upside-down world, and this is one of the reasons. This abolition of differences, good and evil, are now a matter of opinion. Another difference that is being abolished, man-woman. Sweden, which is the leading avant-garde progressive society in the world, increasingly is now building schools. Look it up, folks. I report this stuff for a living, and I make sure it's real. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been on for 30 years. Sweden is now building schools or school curricula wherein he and she are abolished in the classroom. No one is addressed by their gender, because every student should feel free to either be male or female or neither. I want you tonight to try to enroll in Google+. Bet a lot of you did. Did you notice what it asked gender, what it said? Male, female, other. Don't laugh. It isn't funny. It is unworthy of laughter. It is frightening, the playing around with sexual identity. There's really there's no good and evil. There's no male and female. It's all socially constructed. One of the great things of Judaism is, indeed, it's a Torah law, man cannot wear women's clothing. Why would it have that? Would it have something against cross-dressing? Because it wanted to preserve the male-female difference. When God creates animals, he doesn't say, Zachar u'nekeva bara'otam. Male and female, he created them. When God creates the human being, he says male and female, he created them. That distinction matters. You go to a place like Mayanot, boys know their boys, girls know their girls, and let me tell you something, most of them love it. There is something inherently dignified and profoundly human in knowing you're a male human or a female human, not just a human. A fourth difference, the holy and the profane. We live in a society, secular society, a lot of good, decent, kind, secular people, and there are a lot of religious jerks. I acknowledge that at the outset. But there is something that secularism must destroy, and that is the concept of the holy. It is dead. We don't have it. That is why public cursing is so common. Why? Because the idea of profane speech doesn't strike the secular world as meaningful. Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol, what you say at the end of Shabbat and Jewish holy days. He who divides, separates between the holy and the secular. Chol is such an interesting word. It means secular and it means sand. Sand is common. The holy is special. We have lost that idea that there is something holy. We have lost the idea that human life is even holy. That brings me to the fifth separation that's being destroyed. Man-animal. We are just animals, we people. Maybe a little smarter than others, but just animals. I spoke on a number of occasions to Ingrid Newkirk on my radio show. She's the head of People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. And she contends that there is no difference between a chicken and a human in worth. She truly believes it. It's not an argument she offers. She truly believes it. Many, many people in the Western world now believe that. We don't. You are not to mistreat a chicken, but you are not to assume a chicken has your value. We are created in God's image. The animals are not. These are the things you learn. For those who think there's nothing left to teach, or that Judaism is irrelevant, a place like Mayanot tells these young people who go there, you're wrong. There is something unbelievably profound here. And they get a sense of worth that comes from having a mission, which they will have because of Chabad's idea that you talk to the world, not just to fellow Jews, and you talk to fellow Jews without judging them by their level of observance. I am indeed a living example of Chabad's attitude. They invite me to things like this, knowing my level of observance. So they live what they live what they preach. Every Jew is precious, every human being is precious. That's the truth. And that is what these kids get. Where are you going to get that? You're going to get that at NYU, you're going to get that where I live at UCLA. You'll get a great deal of confusion about male and female, about human and animal. You'll certainly be taught that there is no God. And let me tell you something, if there is no God, it's all pointless. Let's be honest. There's no question in my mind that the drug generation and the secular generation coincide. People have deep ennui in secular life. No God, no meaning. Let's be honest, if there is no God, this is all a big bad joke. Some prosper, some don't, some are tortured, some have pleasure. And that's it, it's a crapshoot. Life's just a crapshoot, and then you die, and it doesn't matter, everybody has the same fate, which is nothing. It's cheerful, isn't it? Godlessness is really a cheerful thing. No wonder kids go from NYU or UCLA to Mayanot, and what do they see? Happy Chabadniks. By the way, I will tell you, Chabad knows that I know this, and they still invite me. I know a secret that non-Chabad people do not know. If a Chabad rabbi in any community is known as not happy, Crown Heights sends a delegation. Rabbi so-and-so, word's gotten out that you have a dour personality. We expect a change because we believe that you worship God in happiness. It's a motto of Chabad. If Rabbi so-and-so doesn't change, they come at 3 a.m. one night. They replace him with another guy who looks just like him. And nobody knows the difference. They just all think that Rabbi so-and-so got happy. This is not well known. Chabad has asked me not to announce this, but I think it's to their credit. You know what the single most powerful thing to convince anybody about your way of life? The most powerful? Happiness. That's why, frankly, I'm not surprised that Islam doesn't have that much appeal in our society. And this is, I'm not knocking Islam, but I'm telling you that happy Muslim, it's not the first characteristic that strikes you when you see religious Muslims on television. But if you see Chabad, you want to know what's the great new event in their life that has prompted happiness. Chabad rabbis suffer as much as everybody else in life. Everybody has a tough life, everybody. But you wouldn't know it because they really do it with happiness. So kids go from NYU and UCLA, they get meaning, they get purpose, and they see happy people, and then you wonder why it succeeds. There's no riddle. They give an answer to the question everybody needs. Why be Jewish? Why be human? Why go on? That's why it's an honor to be here. Thank you for your work.